Hey, I'm Eddie Joe. I'm a critical care medicine doctor and I have a YouTube channel, obviously. And I'm fortunate when you guys, the viewers, go ahead and write comments to me and ask me questions because then I take a little bit of time to answer them and answer almost every question that people ask me, although some questions are a little bit more challenging to answer on a typing type scale. So I decided I was going to just address this one as a video. And I thank the person who wrote this question because it takes a lot of courage to ask certain questions. And this one has to do with depression and becoming an ICU doctor and depression in medicine and medical school in general, which I feel is something that's kind of taboo. It's thought of as a sign of weakness, even though I really do not think it is. I'm kind of surprised more people don't come out that they're depressed during medical school. And I'll get into that a little bit in this video, talking about how my own life experience led me to the conclusion that is going to basically lead to the creation of this video. If you learn anything, or if I help you, or if you have anything to chime in on, please go ahead and leave comments below. But getting right into the video, not saying the name of this person, but basically he asked if I could do a video talking about the high burnout rate and depression in ICU physicians. Also, he says that he would like to add a little question that maybe I can answer in the video. Many medical students become depressed on antidepressants throughout medical school. If you are a student that had depression in the past, should you rule out critical care as a career? And the flat out answer to that is no, absolutely not. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. First things first, I know the title is probably going to be Depression in Medical School. I don't know what the actual formal title for this video is going to be, but I do not want to miscategorize depression, and if I do, I apologize in advance. That's not the intention of this video. I do think, though, that if you go throughout all medical school and you do not fulfill the DSM criteria at some point during your training, you are a very fortunate small percentage of people. And I'm going to basically explain my personal experience with the DSM criteria during my medical school training. Everybody's training is a little bit different, but ultimately I don't intend on misinterpreting the definition. If I do, please politely correct me in the comments, not say you are terrible and a bad person. And like I said, this is me opening up about my personal experience, and everybody is different. Now, the DSM-5 is, the psychiatrist's cookbook, so to speak. And the definition, I'm going to read it to not misstate it. It says that you have to have 5 of the following symptoms that have to have been present during the same 2-week period, with at least one of the symptoms must be a diminished interest / pleasure or depressed mood. And just all those criteria include depressed mood, diminished interest or loss of pleasure in almost all activities, which is anhedonia, significant weight change or appetite disturbance, sleep disturbance with insomnia or hypersomnia, psychomotor agitation or retardation, which is something I had to look up because I didn't know what that meant. Well, I knew it at one point when I was doing my psych rotation, but I had forgotten. Believe it or not, you do forget almost everything you learn in medical school. I'll say this as somebody who's been out of medical school since 2019 for quite a few years now. Fatigue or loss of energy, feeling of worthlessness, diminished ability to think or concentrate, also indecisiveness, and the one that I consider to be the most serious is recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt or a specific plan for committing suicide. Pretty significant symptoms and findings to define depression. Now, why do I feel depression is so common in medical school? Well, for those of you who are in medical school, you already know what it means. And those of us who have gone through medical school, we already lived through all of this. For those people who are thinking about going to medical school, this is what you're gonna have to feel, what you're gonna have to deal with. Okay? You're basically trapped in your room all day, or in the library, or somewhere else studying all day long. This is just the way it is. This is what it takes to become a doctor, and this is what it takes to become a good doctor. But if you're trapped in a room all day, you're going to be going into debt while your cohorts, your friends, people who you grew up with, they are getting married, they are partying, they are already finishing their careers, they are having kids, they're already getting their life established. You see all their pictures on social media, you get to see them, you get to hear about it through your friends directly. It's really hard, and it really takes a toll on you emotionally to see your friends, who you're happy for, by the way, because you want the best for them, obviously, but it really takes a toll when you are trapped in a room all day studying, all night, all mornings studying, and you see other people who are living their best life, living their young adult life, and being quite good at it. And it really hurts because social media only shows you the good times rather than the bad times. I know my social media shows, for example, recently on my Instagram I posted pictures of me in Hawaii, but it doesn't show me at the end of the day when I'm beat the hell up after, having a very rough day in the ICU. So that's that. In addition, you miss out on weddings, you miss out on parties, you get sent these wedding invitations and you don't have money to go fly out to the wedding because everybody's in a different part of the country. You miss out on time with your family. You get to see you have the unfortunate perspective where you see your grandparents age 4 years while you're in medical school, and their time is limited. The same thing with your parents. If somebody's sick, you get to miss out on all the time that you could otherwise spend with them. You spend birthdays alone. I remember in particular my 25th birthday. It was my 25th birthday, so I was like, woohoo, I'm gonna be 25. But at the same time, I had no money. The climate of where I went to medical school in was rainy and it was very gloomy. And I'm a seasonal depression kind of guy where, like, I won't say that, but gloomy days make me gloomy. It probably happens to a lot of you. And I had a test coming up, and so I couldn't even do anything whatsoever to celebrate my 25th birthday. And that was very, very hard on me, but I got over it. The other thing is, like, when you're on vacation from medical school, you don't have enough time to see everybody when you go into town. What I used to do is I used to just have everybody meet up at one place, and then I would just say hi to one person at a time and just talk to them for like 3 minutes and not really get to share any time with my friends when I would go back into town. And then people would get mad at you because they don't see you, or you forgot to invite them that day that you were going to have that get together. I mean, there's just so many petty things that people hold against you, and they just don't understand. You lose friendships. You don't have enough time to exercise when you're in medical school. And then you always have the pressure that you're never doing well enough. You could always do better. And then you beat yourself up because if you go into medical school, I mean, you want to be the best because you want to be the best person to take care of patients. People are putting their lives in your hands. You want to be the best. And if you're not the best, you're going to be kicking your own butt because you're not up to par. The other thing is that you always have the elephant in the room being the next day of the next step exam or the next shelf exam. Every single exam that, when you're not studying, you're feeling guilty that you're not studying. All these things just bring you down. I don't want to dissuade anybody from going to medical school, but this is the reality. And to those of us who've gone through medical school, or to those of you who are going to medical school, we've all felt your pain before. And this is real. This is like real. It's very hard. And then, you have to study histology. Damn, that was so boring. It's hard. It just brings you down. Then you have the problem where you don't have any money. Medical school is super expensive. I mean, I'm a first generation Cuban immigrant. Like, my parents didn't have a lot of money. We were okay, but not enough money to like be handing out cash to everybody. It was really hard to not have a job. And, there was a 7-year stretch of my life where I did not go on one vacation. I didn't go on vacation throughout all of medical school, and I didn't go on vacation until I was a second-year resident. It was actually, I think I might have been a third-year resident when I went on my first vacation with my now wife. It was crazy. You're just broke. It's just the way it is. The other thing is that you may not like the city that you're living in. The climate of the city where you're in medical school, it might not be the climate that you grew up with. If you grew up in like sunny Florida, and then you're living up in, let's say, Minnesota, because that's where you got your residency or where you got into medical school, it's going to be a little bit hard to deal with the climate differences. Or let's say you're from up north and you move somewhere south, you don't have the seasons as you did before. I mean, all these things just bog you down. I already mentioned that seasonal depression is real, and it also brings you down. And the other thing is that, as I mentioned before, when you're in medical school, a lot of your classmates are people who are alphas and they want to be the best too, and a lot of them just might be bad people. They might not be friendly people. They might be gunners. They might be people who are trying to put you down. And so all these things are things that we are not adapted to cope with. And you put all this together and you have a recipe for mental health disasters. That's pretty cut and dry, at least in my opinion. This depressed mood that we get, we feel as if the sun is not shining bright enough. It's always a gloomy day. I felt this all the time where the light of the tunnel just wasn't coming. You have another stressor in your face, you have another exam, you have another night with lack of sleep, you have another hoop to jump. It's never enough. And these things are going to take the energy right out of you. It's going to suck the life out of you. It's just part of how it is. And I don't know how to make it better. The other criteria outside of depressed mood is weight gain or weight loss. I personally did not suffer through this. This is not a criteria that I ever went through, but I saw a lot of my classmates go through it. I used to see people who, once they start medical school or they start residency, they just start putting on the pounds because, anxiety leads people to eat. And this is not something I'm an expert at all. I just watched people do it, both weight gain and weight loss. It's just how it is. I didn't see people go through this at all during fellowship, though. Fellowship was kind of a happy time in most people's lives. the next criteria is sleep disturbances, whether it's hypersomnia or insomnia. And I recently read an article of how napping during medical school is actually a sign of depression. And that I had already written this particular video when I read that. And it's just, I'll try to find it and I'll link it below or something. But it really, really rang a bell with me because I was napping 2 or 3 times a day on my days that I didn't have class. And I knew that there was something wrong with me because I've never been somebody who has taken naps before. But that was just something I did in my first 2 years. Actually, I napped throughout all of medical school, but then I never napped after that. It just didn't work out for me because I never felt better after I napped. I always felt worthless after I napped because that could have been time that I could have studied, but I just needed to nap, at that time. It was rough. I will say that exercise did help out with the insomnia and the hypersomnia, but that's just how I was able to cope with it. And then the other way that I was able to cope with it was cleaning up my sleep hygiene a bit. I realized that I was somebody who's better at studying in the morning than doing overnights. And so I used to go to bed like at 9 o'clock or so and wake up at 5 a.m., have my Cuban coffee because, like I said, I'm Cuban and that's how I roll. And then I would just study from like 5 until like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and just go straight through. That's what I ended up finding that worked for me, more so than doing like the late night studying. My wife is like a late night studier. I'm an early morning studier. It makes for some interesting dynamics when we have to do stuff around the house and stuff, but whatever, it's all fine. Something else that's categorized here in sleep disturbances is having nightmares. And I used to have nightmares all the time, just nightmares about failing a test, not showing up for a test, not being late to a test, not having studied for the test, not showing up for my rotations on time, missing the bus because I had to take a bus and trains and stuff like that to get to the hospitals where I did my rotations. I used to have nightmares all the time. I mean, this is something that I don't think was like unique to me. I think this is something that a lot of my peers had as well, and that's why I don't think that is very uncommon. The next criteria in the DSM is talking about psychomotor agitation and psychomotor retardation, and I had to look this one up, as I mentioned before, because I didn't really remember the details of this. But people who have psychomotor agitation, it says they may feel unable to sit still, as if their body's stiff, unable to relieve tension, desperate to find a comfortable position, as you see me kind of like jerking around in my chair. But that's just because, these videos make me give off a lot of energy. Increasingly anxious, as if their thoughts are racing, exasperated, irritable, and tearful. This is all of us who were in medical school. You just look around the whole classroom and you just see everybody just fidgeting, tapping, getting like weird little tics. I had weird little tics when I was in medical school too, that it was weird. I mean, I couldn't explain it. There are tics that I never had after medical school. It was the way that, DSM explains that people may go ahead and show this psychomotor agitation is to pace around a room, wring their hands, tap their fingers, tap their feet, fidget, start and stop tasks abruptly, talk very quickly, take clothes off and put them back on. I'm not going to do that because this is a child-friendly channel, I hope. Look around your classroom. This is basically everybody who's in a class is going to be having some sort of psychomotor agitation. This is common. That's why it's so easy to categorize depression, at least in my opinion. And once again, don't shoot the messenger here. Or I guess you could shoot the messenger because I'm the one who's responsible for what I'm saying. But this is the majority of us when we're going through medical school. We all have these symptoms. So that's just that. Psychomotor retardation this never happened to me. The psychomotor retardation is a slowing down of thought and a reduction in physical movements in an individual. It could be a visible slowing of physical and emotional reactions, including speech and affect. I've seen people who this happens to as well. Now, the next DSM little subheading for depression and the diagnosis of depression is fatigue or loss of energy. Very common, very common. I would just be so down on myself that my classmates and my roommates would want to hang out and like go out and do stuff, and I just didn't want to do it. I just wasn't interested in doing that at all, even though growing up where I grew up, I was extremely social. I would go out, I would go to nightclubs and party and whatnot. But when I was in medical school, I always found myself too tired to go out. I didn't want to. It was just this feeling where I just didn't care about any type of social interaction, which is something that used to bring me a lot of pleasure, was to hang out with my buddies. Also, not having money contributed to that significantly. Now, this one is huge, and it's the feeling of worthlessness. Again, this is why when that young man asked me if I thought, you could still become a critical care doctor, which is what I am today, after going through depression, or at least filling the criteria for depression, why I think that this is kind of a no-brainer that somebody who has depression could go on and become a critical care doctor if they actually sort out all their symptoms and sort their life out, which a lot of times just finishing medical school will go ahead and, once you hit that light at the end of the tunnel or jump that bridge or cross that bridge, of getting out of medical school and into residency, you're going to feel a whole lot better. At least I did, and I wish that the same for those of you who are in medical school who are currently going through depression, because I honestly think that residency were the best 3 years of my life. That's a different story. But the feeling of worthlessness, that was something I basically dealt with almost every single day throughout the 4 years that I was there, because I was not contributing to society. I was always the type of person that I had a full-time job within parameters of US legal law when I was 17 years old, and I worked every single day, at least on something. I mean, look at me right now. I'm working on YouTube videos, and it's Sunday, March 31st. I mean, I don't have to go to work till tomorrow, and I'm here in my house making YouTube videos. I need to be productive. And I need to feel like I'm contributing to society. Like, hopefully right now this video is contributing to somebody. This is who I am. But when I was in medical school, I wasn't doing anything that was making a difference in anybody's life or my own life. Well, obviously my own life, because I was becoming a doctor. But I felt worthless because of this. I felt like I was a financial drag to the credit card companies, to my family. I felt like I was a financial drag to society, just getting more and more into debt, while other people were being productive and other people were making money and contributing to society. I felt like I wasn't good enough to be in medicine. There was always this one guy who was in my medical school who could memorize everything underneath the sun. He had like this photographic memory of the textbook, and he always did well. And meanwhile, I struggled because my intelligence is different than his type of intelligence. So then I felt worthless because I'm like, how come he could do it and I can't do it? And what's wrong with me? It was tough. And if this happens to you, you're not alone. I went through the same thing. Doing only medicine also makes you weird, because you invest so much time and energy into just doing medicine that you don't have time to, for example, pick up a magazine necessarily. At least I didn't. I don't know if you have. Can't read the newspaper. Like, I didn't have time to follow sports more than just checking on ESPN.com, checking like what the standings are. And it kind of makes you weird, because then you can't interact with people properly. You can't necessarily talk about other things because you're not as informed as you once were. And not to mention that most of us are weird to begin with. So that's just adding another piece of straw to the pile, I guess. You learn also to see life through a different lens when you're going through medicine. It changes your way of thinking, and you basically become a hermit. And you feel worthless because you see your friends going through, as I mentioned before, all these other stages of their life, and meanwhile you are there in a room studying by yourself. I felt worthless all the time, almost every single day. I had that feeling of worthless. And all these thoughts would go through my mind every day. Is this opportunity cost of going to medicine way too high for what ended up coming, like what I felt would end up coming out of it? Because I could have done other things with my life. So anyway, that one was a big one, the feeling of worthlessness. The next criteria is having a diminished ability to concentrate or indecisiveness. This one's also very, very common. I think it's common that I say that things are common, but I don't really think that this one counts for depression, to have a diminished ability to think, concentrate, because I think this pretty much defines you having a pulse and being in medical school, because you're basically drinking water through a fire hose, getting all this information. You don't know what's the best study method, and so you jump around with a bunch of different study methods. I mean, I didn't figure out a good study method until I was in my third year of medical school. So those first 2 years I was just floundering, trying to figure out, I was getting good grades and getting by, but at the same time I just had no good study habit, because I didn't have it figured out. And studying for pathology is different than studying for anatomy, where one is mostly memorization and another one's purely understanding. I mean, it's a huge spectrum. God, this is a crazy rant. Anyway, what else was I gonna say? The other thing that makes you have a diminished ability to concentrate is that you're always thinking, like I said, about your study methods, and you're always thinking about your peers. Like, why are they doing better than me? And then you're not focusing on what you need to do, because you have all these other things in the back of your mind. Like, should I read the book? Should I watch YouTube videos to teach me these things? And if I see YouTube videos, which one should I watch? Or should I watch them all? And by the time that you're done deciding with that, the test is there, and you haven't even studied yet. This happens all the time. It's bad. Now, the one I think is the most serious one of these criteria, and the one that should not be joked around. And I'm not going to go too much into like things that I saw from other people about this, is the fact that some people have recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideations without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt or a specific plan to commit suicide. If this is you, please go get help. You need help. And that there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There is something wrong though if you take your life. Please go get help. You need it. If you talk to somebody, you're gonna feel a whole lot better. When I was doing my psychiatry rotation, the psychiatry rotation hit me pretty rough, because it was just different where I went to medical school, and I had the opportunity to speak to a psychiatrist just because they were there, and we were just talking about random things, and she kind of got into my head a little bit. And I might be getting a little too personal with this, but we talked for a good amount of time after like my classmates left and all that. We just sat down one-on-one and we just talked for a while, and I felt so much better after we had that chat, that I really think that seeing some sort of therapist or seeing somebody would definitely help you out. And the resources are there. I'm sure that you could find them. I was just fortunate enough to have somebody to talk to, and I wish you had the ability to talk to somebody as well. So please go get help. I really would recommend, if you're suffering through some sort of depression, is to get off of social media, because it will bring you down. You post something, you don't get as many likes as somebody else, and then that kind of brings you down. And it's not just because you're jealous of them, it's just because you're not there yet. You get to see your friends posting the pictures, like, people say to me, "Oh, Eddie, you just went to Hawaii, like you have this success and you get to do these things." But meanwhile, like, I'm just here. And I tell a lot of these people, like, for example, my nurses, and who I love you all at my hospital, they're like, "Oh, congratulations, you went to Hawaii, how was it, blah blah blah," like, and being like, "Oh, I wish I could go to Hawaii." And I say, "Look, you are 23 or 24 or 26 years old. I'm 37 right now. Now's when I get to do this. So now I'm going to do this because I could financially afford it." But when I was 26, when I was 25, when I was 24, I was crammed up in a room going through all these symptoms and all these, manifestations, the manifestations of going to medical school. That was me during my early 20s and my mid 20s, up to my 30s, basically till I got into residency. And this was my life. And that's something that needs to be put into perspective. I mean, even my wife, who's 28 years old right now, she sometimes says, "Oh, look at the person, look at the person who is doing this, or look at the person who's doing that." And I say, "Look, you are 28 years old right now, and you are doing all these fun things with me. We're doing them together because of what we've achieved, because she's a crazy hard worker." But when I was 28, when I was her age, I was still in medical school, and I was still crammed up in a hole, and I still didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So things could always be better, but remember, things could always be worse. You can not be in medical school, and you can not have that light in the end of the tunnel that you will eventually get to if you work hard enough. Now, there are a couple lifesavers, and there's always, like I said, the light at the end of the tunnel. And your classmates are going to be the people who are going through the suck with you. They're the people who are in the trenches with you, and you need them, and they need you. And when you're going through a tough situation like medical school, and you're going through these tough situations with these people by your side, those are the true everlasting friendships. I know that there are people who, I haven't seen in 8 or 9 years, who went to medical school with me, but we still keep in touch, and we still talk at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, at least through social media or via texting. And those people are going to be your lifelong friends. So don't think you're alone on this. And when you do find one of these people who you can talk to, always remember to not just talk about yourself. You need to get into their mind and help them with their problems too. We all have problems. I mean, even if you watch some reality TV shows where people are like multimillionaires, you get to see, and I won't say that reality TV is, accurate or anything like that, but you talk to anybody, people who are wealthy, and you talk to people who are poor, and they're going to tell you they have problems. Everything is relative. Everybody's selfish in that way. Maybe selfish isn't the right word, but everybody has problems. And so if you are trying to get help from somebody, well, then you should try to help them too, because they probably need a hand as well. So don't make it all about yourself. If you need to be medicated, go and get medicated. Like, I don't see a stigma. But if you don't get help and you end up taking your life, then that's the worst possible scenario. And I wouldn't recommend that, obviously, for anybody, but I wouldn't want anybody to get so close to where they get to that point where they're having suicidal ideation and they have a plan and they go through with it. That's just awful. And there is a huge suicide problem in physicians right now. And it's just because we have these egos where we are supposed to be supermen and superwomen, and we don't get help, and we need to get help. That's whatever way possible, just get help. Remember that choosing the right specialty is also going to be a big factor in your mental well-being, because if you go after the money, you are going to be in deep poo-poo. You're not going to be fulfilled with your career because you're not going to have that career satisfaction. And that's just simple as that. Don't go after the money. That's just going to lead out to more burnout. Remember that there's light at the end of the tunnel. My clearing of all these symptoms occurred during residency, and I hope yours occurs sooner than residency if you're in medical school or if you are planning on going to medical school. Residency for me was a blessing. It was a ton of fun. I loved the people who I worked with. I loved my attendings. It was very, very hard. It was very tough, but I went through it with a group of people who are phenomenal people and who I still keep in touch with almost every day. including, well, not yet today, because we haven't busted each other's balls yet today, but we possibly will. Then just remember there's still hiccups. Like, life isn't perfect. You will have some adversity that comes your way, but hopefully you will have the strength to get through it. And I wish you all the best. I wish to those of you who are struggling, know that you're not alone, that everybody goes through it, and that's not minimizing it. It's just the truth. At least when I reviewed these symptoms for the DSM-5, I said, hey, that's me, and hey, that was me, and that was me, and that was me, and that was me. And you're not alone. You're not alone. Just find a way to get help and find a way to get stronger, get better, and just chase that light at the end of the tunnel, because you'll reach it. Okay. Hope that this video was of some use to you, and I wish you all the best. Bye.